Let's kick things off with a really quick experiment, okay? Wherever you are right now, I just want you to take a second and listen to these words. Suffocative, overwhelmed, terrified. Notice what happens in your chest. Maybe your breathing gets a little shallower? Now clear your mind for a second and listen to these. Delightfully, content, relieved. Notice that shift? You actually just participated in the exact same scientific methodology we're going to be exploring today.
Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us. If you're a focused learner who loves breaking down really complex ideas into clear, actionable takeaways, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we are digging into the hidden architecture of the English language. You see, we usually think of words simply as dictionary definitions, right? Just little tools we use to point at things. But what if I told you that words are actually measurable data points of emotion, of history, and of professional power?
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the science of word emotions. Second, anxiety in our lexicon. Third, the language of professionals. And finally, the incredible richness of our vocabulary.
Starting with Section 1, the science of word emotions, mapping the psychology of language.
So we're going to look at this truly groundbreaking study called Worry Words. And to really wrap your head around the scale of this research, just look at this number, 44,450. The researchers behind this didn't just pick a handful of scary or happy terms to look at. No, they systematically compiled over 44,000 English words, and they had real human annotators rate every single one of them on a scale ranging from high calmness to high anxiety.
And this brilliantly illustrates what they found. When you categorize that massive data set, about 60% of the words we use are pretty neutral. We're talking about everyday life words, things involving your daily commute, running an errand, doing a chore, or the schedule you need to maintain. But look at this. A massive 27% of our words evoke some level of anxiety, compared to a mere 13% for calmness. Our language literally leans toward the anxious. And, evolutionarily that makes total sense. Our ancestors needed to communicate immediate threats and hazards way more urgently than they needed to say they felt peaceful.
Now, you might be wondering, come on, how much can we really trust people rating their own subjective feelings? Well, the study used over 1,000 annotators, and it achieved a split half reliability score of 0.82. Let me translate that. In the world of psychological metrics, a 0.82 is rock solid. It proves that these emotional reactions aren't just random individual quirks, they're actually deeply shared, highly reliable reactions among English speakers everywhere.
Let's move to Section 2, Anxiety in our lexicon. From calm to smoldering.
Check out the contrast when we look at the absolute extremes of the worry word scale. At a +3, which is the absolute maximum level of anxiety, we find these heavy, tense words like suffocative and smolder. Honestly, just saying them out loud creates a kind of visceral tension. But on the exact opposite end, right at -3 for maximum calmness, we see words like delightfully and generous. This isn't just poetry we're talking about, this is measurable psychological impact. The vocabulary you choose literally acts like an emotional dial, turning the anxiety of your listener up or down.
Which brings us to Section 3, the language of professionals, precision and power.
So understanding that emotional weight is absolutely crucial. But what happens when we shift gears to conscious strategy? Well, in academic or formal writing, swapping out a basic word for a precise verb completely transforms your authority. Instead of saying you guess something, you hypothesize. You don't just disagree with a theory, you critique or dispute it. And when you're looking at data, you analyze, deduce, and synthesize. These aren't just fancy synonyms to make you sound smart. They're structural indicators. They literally tell your reader that you're operating with rigorous analytical precision.
And we see this exact same principle over in the business world. In general English, we might casually talk about wanting to make money or do more sales, but professionals, they generate revenue, forecast profits, or delegate resources. Using a word like generate right next to professional concepts implies a systematic, scalable process, not just a one-off stroke of luck. It instantly signals competence and complete control over the outcome.
Let's see how this builds into complex social interactions, like, say, a formal negotiation. Just notice the progression of the verbs here. First, you hold negotiations. Then you iron out differences, which is such a wonderfully visual phrase, right? It implies smoothing out a wrinkled piece of fabric. Next, you accommodate or persuade each other as you cooperate toward a shared goal. And finally, you wrap up the settlement. These very specific phrasing choices naturally guide the mental progression of a meeting from a rigid, formal start all the way to a tidy, collaborative conclusion.
Moving into our final part, Section 4, the richness of vocabulary. etymologies, and extremes. Think about how we describe scale. You could tell someone a problem is extremely small. Sure, that works. Or you could describe it as Lilliputian. Deriving from the tiny inhabitants of the island of Lilliput in Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, this word paints a much more specific, vivid, and literary picture in the listener's mind. And it contrasts so beautifully with massive words like gargantuan or colossal.
English is also famous for borrowing perfectly calibrated words from other languages whenever standard English kind of falls short. Take the word chutzpah. It's a Yiddish borrowing that essentially means nerve or effrontery, but it captures a very specific, almost admirable type of cheekiness or audacity that a simple word like rudeness completely misses. Like, imagine someone politely asks a student to take a loud phone call outside, and the student complains that it's too cold out there. That right there, that is pure chutzpah.
We also have these incredible words to express our personal energy levels and our personality. The next time your energy is totally fading, instead of just saying, I'm tired, you could say you feel torpid, sluggish and lethargic. Or if you're dealing with an ongoing health issue, it's chronic. On the flip side, instead of just saying, I'm happy, what if you said you were ebullient, highly and vigorously enthusiastic, literally bubbling over with energy? Juxtaposing these extremes really shows how accurately we can describe our exact internal state to the people around us.
Finally, time and change are quite literally baked into our lexicon. Just look at the word fortnight, meaning a period of 2 weeks. It actually comes directly from the Old English phrase for 14 nights. Whether we are talking about a temporary delay, a prolonged shift, or an immediate transition, every single time we use these words, we are carrying ancient ways of measuring reality right into the modern era.
So, the crucial takeaway here is this. Whether you are looking at the 0.82 reliability score of anxiety-inducing vocabulary, the precise academic verbs that establish your professional authority, or the ancient etymology of how we describe time, language is never neutral. Every single word carries measurable, emotional, and contextual weight, and understanding this data empowers your own communication in truly remarkable ways.
It has been an absolute pleasure guiding you through this explainer today. We've journeyed from the hard science of emotional data points all the way to the artful practice of selecting the perfect vivid term. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to reflect on. Knowing what you know now about the invisible power of your vocabulary, will you weigh your words differently the next time you speak?